What's happening, everybody? Kyra and Ben back again. We've been in and out of the studio, so thank you for your patience. But, you know, we have lives and we want to go travel. Ben was just in Disney. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, we took our granddaughter who is 9. We wanted her to get away from her younger sisters and have just a breather. And it was a lot of fun. I was just telling Kira, I was playing the crane machine at the Disney arcade, and I'd won about 20 little stuffed animals, and I'm passing them out to people in the arcade. And it was probably one of the most nicest things I've ever seen someone do. And people would come up to me, complimenting me on it. And it was just shout out to Lily. You're an amazing child.
I think that is such a sweet, heartwarming story, and I think it shows what a good person you're helping raise and be around and your influence. So I think that's really beautiful. So speaking also of children, today we are covering the film Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway. This was a user suggestion, so thank you for recommending it to us. I had not seen this film, heard of it, or knew the true story that it is based on before it was introduced to me through this podcast. Ben, what about you?
Yeah, I had never heard of it. It was suggested, and I actually saw the backstory on it when I looked at to see what it was about, and it piqued my interest, so I threw it by you, and I was like, this sounds like something that would be really interesting to cover, and here we are.
And here we are. So let's dive in. Obviously, it follows the story of Mrs. Chatterjee, who is an Indian woman who comes to live to Norway with her husband because he gets a job out there, and he tells her oh, we're going to live in Norway. We're going to start our family there. So she follows him there. While they're there, they have 2 children. And something that I thought was weird was that the government just comes in and does these wellness checks on the kids. I don't know. That felt weird to me, without school or any intervention. The processes felt weird to me. What did you think?
Well, from what I understood, the coworker had them come in to watch them because the husband confronts him at the about it, and that's what I thought. I thought the coworker had mentioned something about some kind of abuse that he saw, and that's why it happened.
Okay, so I thought that was abuse towards her. Okay, well that makes sense, and then the children would be unfit for the abuse. Okay, I was a little confused, guys. My bad. So they come in, they're watching the kids for what it sounds like 10 weeks. They watch the kids, and then in something that I felt completely unprofessional, they just basically kidnap. They just take them.
Yeah, I was watching it, and all of a sudden, they just grabbed them, threw them in the car, and took off. And she clings onto the car and goes flying off the car. And I'm like, oh my god, what just happened? I'm like, this. I mean, no notice, no nothing. I mean, I thought it was totally unprofessional. I don't know if that's how they do things in India. I mean, not India, Norway. But it just totally blew my mind that they would just grab the child and run out the door like a criminal.
Literally like a criminal. And the fact that they were so fake nice to her, not even being hey, maybe you should work on this and change this, or we're going to take your kid. They were just so bent on taking the children that it felt like they never gave her a chance. It felt like they were just doing whatever they needed to do to get these children into the government's custody.
Yeah, at one point in the movie they mentioned that most of the children that were Indian heritage were being taken, and it was under the rug. Now, I don't know if this is true. I don't. This is the viewpoint of Mrs. Chatterjee in her biography. I don't I'm not trying to knock Norway. I don't know what happened in Norway. I'm not saying you're racist. I'm not saying you're child stealers. Nothing like that. I'm saying what I witnessed in the movie.
Exactly. And this movie does not paint Norway in a good light, I will say. But to that point, this movie also is very one-sided. Obviously it is. We're obviously going to be on the side of our protagonist, Mrs. Chatterjee. But at that same point, I felt like they could have really dove into a lot of other aspects of it. I mean, the movie's a runtime of 2.5 hours, and the most interesting parts I felt we could have had more of. The whole work that she does with the female leader when she goes to the conference. I feel like we could have seen more of that work. We just get in a montage. I feel like the work that when she has that secret meeting with the other woman about the video of your child, he's sad, he wants to come home. I thought we could have expanded on that instead of it was a lot of, I don't know, it just felt very long in parts that it could have been shorter.
Yeah, I agree. And looking into I actually, since we've watched the movie, you have to delve into what it says on the internet and what the facts are, or the facts stated. And from what I understood, there was proof of abuse by the husband and the brother-in-law against Mrs. Chatterjee. So, I mean, there was reasons for them to investigate. I get that. I mean, I don't know why they did what they did by just taking the child and running. That seemed like really dramatic. And if that really happened, that's awful, because no one wants to see their child just ripped out of their arms. I mean, that's just terrible. And the stuff she went through, if all this is true, is just awful. I mean, you can't look at one person because their cultural differences and think that they're an unfit parent. I mean, that'd be like me going into, like, say, the deepest part of Africa and going to a tribe and seeing how they raise their children and being like, oh, this is wrong. I have to take this child out of here. You know what? Because I'm the intruder. I am not part of that culture, so I can't do that.
100%, 100%. And this movie, it felt like one of the parts that made me so mad was throughout all these like court cases that she's going on, they're like filming her have like these hysterical breakdowns, like after her children get forcibly ripped from her after she's done nothing. She's like, just give me my, like, forcibly ripped from her. And then they're like, oh, well, she's mentally unstable because she's screaming and she like swung at a police officer. It's like, yeah, this police officer ripped her child literally from her arms, and then the other one is like restraining her. I thought that was so, I hated that. It made me feel like it was very demonizing to, like, I don't know, to like women having emotions. And like you would see it like with the husband a lot too. Like obviously like in real life he was like abusive, but like he was always trying to like silence her and be like, hey, you need to get it together. We need to assimilate. We need to change. We need to do this. We need to do that. Whereas like she was like, but I want to raise my children with the culture that we grew up in, and I want to fight for them. Whereas he was very much like all about himself and his citizenship and like making a life for him in Norway and not really like thinking about her and the kids, I believe. And they point that out too when they're like, oh, well, you don't help with chores. And he's like, yeah, I don't help with chores. I thought that was so funny that he got so like bent out of shape about that. But I don't know. And then going back to her brother-in-law, his brother, obviously a dirtbag. But I thought that one scene between the brother and the representative of Norway was super interesting, like that bribe scene. Because I was like, okay, you're obviously going to the weakest link to bribe them, painting you in an even worse light. Like,
yeah, but like if you're gonna do that, you would go to the weakest link. You'd go to the person that you know is going to be the most easily manipulated. I mean, they probably looked into his financials and everything. We're like, oh, like if we go to him, we could probably do this. I'm not saying that's what you did. No way, trust me. I'm not trying to bash you. I'm not. I'm just saying what I think happened. Like if this is how it went, then that's what I believe happened. I mean, and with culture, like the Indian culture, from what I see, and I'm not sure this is even true, is that the husband works, goes out, makes the money, and then the wife is the patriarch of the house. So she runs the house. She's like what's comes in the house is furniture, the food, the preparation of food. So I think that's, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not Indian. I'm just saying from what I've seen from different movies and different aspects, I feel that's the way the Indian culture is. I mean, so I could see that when that was happening. Like I was like, oh, I can kind of understand that. But I also understand that like he was a total jackass.
He was a jackass. And in my mind, because I am inferring a lot between the lines, in my mind, like she talks about how she went to school and got her bachelor's like degree in science and how like she was educated. So in my thought, like, and then she was like, oh, and then you wanted to marry me. And I thought that, well, we're going to get back to that scene that I'm thinking about in 1 second. I'm going to finish my point. So and then they get married. And then to me, it's kind of seemed like she gave up her career or her job or whatever aspiration she had to move to Norway. Because she says that. She says, well, before I moved to Norway, I had a job when the other lawyers questioning her in India. And she's like, well, I had a job. And he's like, well, you don't have a job now. And she's like, well, because I moved to Norway with my husband. It's like they're trying to set her up to not win constantly. And I feel like, so obviously, like there is a disclaimer before this movie saying that it is dramatized and it is based on true events, but not a true depiction. And I think what we see a lot in the film is like when you're living this, I can only imagine, like when you're living this, everything is so heightened and it feels so much worse than like what it could be. And it can feel like the whole world is against you. I mean, I would have loved to see more scenes of like her and the female lawyer that she had in India, because it felt like they had like a really great bond. They had like a really great team. If they wanted to make like Yeah, because this movie was like half like melodrama, half courtroom drama, half like family drama. It was kind of all over the map, which I know is like very true for real life because it is based on a true story.
Yeah, like learning over time the history of India and like their subterfuge of like how they were put down like during the being occupation of Britain and all they had to overcome and everything. I can kind of see how like it's a battle for the Indian people to like get respect, and I feel like this movie showed that like even though she was a mother that was living her traditions and doing what she wasn't respected. Like they looked at her as just like you're an Indian woman and you have no say in anything. And it was like the white women that were in charge of the children and family services seemed to look down on her for being an Indian mother, and I thought that was awful.
I thought it was awful. I hated those women, and I try not to hate women, but those women were the literal worst. Like when they're laughing in court and stuff and just like snickering to each other, whatever. They're the worst characters in the movie. I hate them. Another character I hate in the movie as well was the teacher who was like, oh, well, she's not involved in the kids' schooling because a project was turned in late. It's like, okay, she's also like not, she's like being watched every day and like she forgets one project, like cut her a break. I don't know. It felt like she was getting judged so harshly all the time. And like, I don't know. I liked when in the first appeal or second appeal, when the teacher comes and says like, hey, I like, and they kind of write her off as a disgruntled employee. I liked what she had to say because like she really did see her like fighting for her children, which is like, I get it. Like in the court of law, there's no room for emotion because it is like the law and you have to hold the law and like whatever comes along with that. But I felt like if one person is doing like all this to get their kids back, like obviously they're mentally fit enough to like sit through like courtroom procedures and like beg and plead. But like she felt like she was not being heard until I think the final courtroom scene in India.
Yeah, one part that really tore me up was when she was looking at the judge and she's like, please, let me say something. And she's like, I'll do whatever you want. I won't feed with my hands. I won't. She's like, I just want my children. I'll do whatever you tell me. She's like, I'll be a good mom. I'll be a good mom. Just let me please have my children. And I'm like, oh my God, this woman's basically saying, look, I'll do anything you want. Just give me my children back. And the judge is like, yeah, no. And I'm like, what? No. I mean, listen to what this woman's saying. She's not saying like, she's saying you can watch her. She's saying you can do anything you want. Just give her the chance to be a mother. And I'm like, just a lot of it was just really heart wrenching. I was like, oh my God, as someone that doesn't have a child in their life, I was like, oh my God, I would totally do anything to get my child back in my life. So I totally understood what this woman was saying. I mean, you'll make sacrifices. You do whatever you have to do to have your child in your arms. So like, I don't know. It was really emotional for me. I thought it was a really awful depiction of the government and like how the government can just do whatever they want and get away with it and do.
And that is the key. And do. The government will screw you over, and they will, time and time again. And I think it shows, too, because they talked a lot about how the more kids that they have in the foster care system, the, like, more money that they get. And, like, I get the foster care system in Norway seems broken. They say it's children first, but I don't agree with that. And then I feel like the foster system here in America is broken as well. Like, I feel like people that are foster parents don't do it for the right reasons. They do it to get the money. Like we even see like when she, because I mean, and I was right. I was with her. Like you can't kidnap your own kids, but also you can't take them illegally across borders. Like I understood that. But like when you see her kidnap her kids, when she tries to make it to Sweden and you see them just like in this like small dingy apartment being ignored. Like she literally walks into the apartment, takes both the kids and leaves and they don't even realize. Like she's able to get to Sweden.
So I know a little bit about foster care because my mom and dad, they fostered children. And a lot of the kids would tell me that they'd go to houses and the people wouldn't care about them because they were making money. All they cared about was the money they were making. And they wouldn't put the money towards the kids. They just take the money and spend it on whatever they could for themselves and neglect the children. Not all foster parents are like this. Do not quote me on this saying, oh, he said, no, I didn't. I'm saying these people told me that this is how sometimes it happens. And it happens. And I can see that because money corrupts people to the ultimate measures. I mean, you don't want to believe in your heart that these people would do that, but money will corrupt people and they will do whatever they can to get it. And it's a proven fact of life.
And we actually see that with the brother-in-law and the in-law family. So the brother-in-law and the brother, because I'm sure the brother was in on it, and that whole scene where he was like trying to convince her that he loves her and that they're like doing what's right, it felt so gross and manipulative and just like really disgusting. Because I was like, you don't care about anything. Like, you have not tried to fight for these children once. Like, all you care about is your citizenship. So the brother makes a deal with the government that if the kids go into his custody, if she never sees them, which she did not sign off on, they would get paid like 50 rupees, and then the Norwegian government would get paid 50. And so then they're like swimming in all this money. And then, I mean, that scene when she goes to the house and she's like, I just want to see my kids. Like, she's so excited. She like decorates her house, like, welcome home. Like, and then she can't. Oh my God, so sad. That scene was like really sad. And then when she goes back and then they like randomly have like a gang of people like warding her off, I was like, where did you all come from?
Yeah, it was a little bit crazy. I mean, watching it, I was staring at it going, wow, like, but you know what? It was their neighbors, and I see, like, so you got to figure they're in their neighborhood, so they're not going to depict her as like this great person. So the mother seems like someone that would be gossiping and said, so I feel that she was telling them, oh, she's abusive, she's this, she's crazy. That's why we have these children. And so I think the neighbors, not knowing, came to their defense and were like, oh my God, you got to get out of here because you're crazy and you're going to hurt these children. So I mean, it's sick and it's just twisted. But that's I just see people doing this all the time. I see people turning people against other people because they can, and it's power, and they have the power. And if you're already down and out, it's hard to get yourself out of that, because like once people see you like that, it's like you're a victim, and then they just start attacking you, and you can't get out of it. You fight and fight and fight, and it seems like you're fighting forever, and there's never a light at the end of the tunnel. But if you don't give up and keep fighting, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and eventually she finds that light.
She does find that light. And I thought the one scene with like the judge and when they're in the final courtroom scene in India, and the judge is like, I want to see the kids and everyone in my chambers. And then he like acting like the kids would actually go and like talk to him and like embrace him, I thought was so wild, because his face is so shocked when they like run to her and they're all like hugging and like dancing, and then he's like, oh, maybe she is a good mom. And I don't know, I really liked the lawyer. I know that you said you didn't really like him because he came back to fight against her, but I think the government did that as a way to kind of like dig at her and dig at the case and be like, but I thought like, because he was talking about being adopted too, and I don't know, maybe he wished like someone like that, like her, would fight for like him as a kid. But I think like seeing her fight for her own children, like I do think he respected her and saw what she was doing and didn't believe like the slander that they were saying about her.
Yeah, because there's a part in the movie where he's buying flowers for his adopted mom. I mean, he loves his adopted mom. He even says it. He goes, I was adopted, and I came from a great family that treated me well and did right by me. So, I mean, in his mind, the system isn't that bad, so he doesn't see what she's going through. Like, I mean, he sees it, but he never experienced it. So to him, when she's telling him all this stuff, he's like, nope, it didn't happen. Nope. Because he luckily got placed into a good family, and he wasn't neglected. He wasn't left to sit in a room by himself while the lady's cooking and the guy's watching television, ignoring the children. So he actually came from a family that was caring and loving. And I think that's at the ending that gets to him, because when he sees just how much this woman cares and how much she loves her children, and he finally embraces it and says, you know what? Yeah, I see it now.
And I think what was really important too was like he said, he was like, she would never trade her children for money, and she would like never do this for money, because they kept harping on the money. That was the motivator for the brother-in-law and the husband. So I thought that was really sweet and really nice, because like we said, money corrupts, and for her, she was uncorruptible in that sense, because all she wanted was her children back. I think too there is a nice moment, and I think that if she kept losing the battle and then she gave up, not saying that she ever would, but if she did, I think the final home that the kids were placed in, like where they go visit, and she was like, you're a good mom, you're going to be a good mom, like she's like comforting the adoptive mom. I thought that was really nice. And I do feel like if the kids like maybe stayed in that home, it would have been like it felt like a good like loving home, and it felt like they really wanted kids. Like maybe they couldn't have kids and then they finally were able to adopt. And like, you know, there is a good system and there is like goodness within it. Obviously, this is the horror side of it, and we do hear a lot of the worst side of it most of the time.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought like the parents that were in that situation would have been good parents because she even says, "Please don't take the children from me, please." And she's like, "But they're my children." She's like, "You'll have children, but these are my children, and I want my children." And you could see like the woman breaking down because she was getting emotionally attached to them. And sometimes there's people out there that can't have children and they have to adopt, and they are loving, caring people that want children out there, and that's the only option they have. And I think that's one of the situations that these people were in. I felt like maybe they couldn't have children on their own, and they got these two children, and you could see that they loved them. I mean, he had like the little automated car and stuff. So like they were going to be spoiled, like rotten. So I mean, and one part I wanted to talk about was like them saying that the boy was autistic, and he showed sign of autism, and it was kind of shocking to me. Like the father was just like, no, 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 and I'm like, you should probably try and get the child tested. I mean, if you love your child, then you hear that they're autistic, and you're not doing anything about it. I mean, that's a reflection on them. And it was the father. The father was just such a tool, and like he has nothing to do with them right now. He has nothing to do with their lives. Like when this all ended, he just separated himself from them. And like as a father, I could never do that.
How could you do that? And I think that too goes back down to like how the father husband like never really cared about like her or his family. He cared about like himself and like what having a family like meant like status wise, because he was like all about like, oh, I got this new job and I have this great position and I'm gonna get citizenship and I have 2 kids and I have like a wife that like takes care of the house. And like I think that's like is very narcissistic, and like you can see that when he just like abandons them. I mean, you can see when he's like actively lying in the court and then just hangs up the call. And then when she pulls out the phone record and she's like, look at all these missed calls. Like, I thought that was so funny. Like, obviously, like, but like, I think that speaks to his character and how he was never truly like invested in what she was invested in. And what she was invested in was like her family and the children.
Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, there's one part when he fights the coworker. He tries to fight the coworker that got him in trouble in the first place. He doesn't fight the coworker because of like the child. He fights the coworker because of the problems the coworker caused him at work. And I was like, okay, you need to get over this work thing because your children are being taken from you, But he could never get over the work. He was like, I worked too hard to get here. I worked too hard to get here. This is where I'm supposed to be. This can't happen. And I was like, all right, listen, it's money, bro. It doesn't take the place of your children. I mean, but for him, it clearly did.
It clearly did. And like even at the end, like he wasn't even happy for like her getting their kids back. Like all he said was like, oh, I'll take care of mom and dad, because like the brother was like, well, now I have no money. And he was like, okay, well, like figure it out. Like I'll take care of mom and dad. And I thought that was kind of sad because it showed that like even though like I don't know. And then obviously it went on to make it seem like she raised the children on her own in India. But I don't know. It was a sad story. Obviously, if you're interested in it, watch it. Do some research about it. It's on Netflix. I watched it on Netflix. The main actress did an incredible performance. I would say like this movie would not be as good if it wasn't for her, because she really carried, I believe, the whole film.
Oh, I 100% agree. She did an amazing job. Doing research, at the end of the movie, it says Mrs. Chatterjee currently lives with her children in India, and that is not true. She lives 1,000 miles away doing a job, and she's about to move another 300. Her elderly parents, are taking care of her children, but it's a job. So, like, at the end of the court proceedings, she probably did live with them and was taking care of them. But you know what? You have to work, and you have to do a job. So she's out there making money, providing for her children. So, props to her for doing the right thing and fighting and giving it 100% of her time to, like, get her children back and not giving up. And like sitting out in front of that building for like hours at a time, waiting for them, just a glimpse of them. I mean, that was heart wrenching.
Oh my God, that was so sad. And then like when they would, okay, back to those evil blonde bitches from Norway, when they would just like snicker and film her, like, okay, you literally just told her that she could see her kids, and now last second you're saying she can't. Like, you have to understand that you're not going about any of this in a professional or good way. Like, literally awful. So I thought that was so bad. And then when they like show a video of her closing the door and like her son being like, "Let me come in," and she's like, "No, I'm cleaning up glass," and they're like, "Well, you wouldn't let your son. You closed the door on your crying son," and she's like, "I was cleaning up glass. Would you want me to have him break his foot, like cut his foot?" I don't know. Yeah, it's a good movie. Like I said, long, and I feel like they could have dug into some things that would made it a little bit more emotionally hitting. Obviously, it was still emotionally hitting, but there's a lot of things that they kind of glossed over that I would have liked to see expanded on.
Yeah, I agree. They should have like a couple of situations they should have like got into more. Like you were saying, the relationship between her and her lawyer, that would have been a great thing to get into because they did have like a bond. Even the first lawyer, the man, when I wanted to see what happened, what he said after they took him off the case. I wanted to be like, oh well, what happened? Because he was really invested in it. He wanted her to get his children, and I think it shed a light on a situation in Norway that really needed to be lightened, and it brought attention to it. And I thought that was great that she went and stood before the ambassador for India to Norway and like got their attention and made them look at it and say, look, this is what's going on, and please help your people. And the lady did. I mean, she came forward and she was like, look, you're not going to get none of our help unless you take this into consideration and you find out what's going on with Ms. Chatterjee and her children and all the Indian children. I thought that was amazing. I mean, kudos to the Indian government for that. I mean, looking out for their people. I mean, you got to look out for your own.
You do, but see, like again, I would have watched an hour of just that, like them working. Like to me, like I don't know, the movie tonally was good, but I think the writing they could have focused on some things that were better than what they focused on, like what you just talked about. All right, so any final thoughts on the film? Watch it if you'd like. It's a watch.
I definitely recommend it. If you get a chance, watch it. Go into it with an open mind and don't just like look at it and go, oh my God. You have to do some research into it if you want to know the story and what really happened behind it. But it's a great watch, and I recommend it.
Yeah, I mean it was definitely fun. Very one sided. Makes you hate the Norwegian government, which like obviously like I don't know. I hate all government. I think because they're all self serving and not for their people. But it's a good movie. So we got spooky season coming up, so we're gonna be doing a lot of horror as of late. So send in your spooky suggestions. The gorier, the better. The scarier, the better. Definitely, definitely send us some fun things. We have some fun things on the docket. But Ben, you got any last thoughts?
Well, wherever you get your podcast fix, tune into Woz Happening, and we thank you all for listening to us. And it's great that we're hitting the charts in Pakistan, Ghana, India. So we love you guys. Thank you so much. We like the international and the national recognition, and we're gonna keep on doing what we do.
Yes, we couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you every week for listening. Thank you for being patient with us while we live our lives. And we'll catch you next time on Woz Happening.